I was today's years old when I learned this.
Have you done anything with group purchasing organizations?
What captive insurance is
What level I can start to allocate funds towards that insurance?
I've always been curious on why nails are called like 16 penny nails.
I actually got the answer right before I looked it up.
How thick is the concrete under the Coliseum?
Every tool was a weightlifting event.
When was the first battery-powered drill that came out?
A cordless drill.
So the cool thing about this Phillips screwdriver,
The Phillips head screwdriver, better than slotted, but not as good as torque or square.
the torque screw has been awesome. What the hell took so long for this thing to get to market?
Welcome to Beers with Contractors.
All right, Beers with Contractors, it is another week. Welcome. And by the way, we are filming this episode during the freeze that everybody is dealing with around the country. So by the time this episode comes out, I am hoping that everybody listening, all 6 of you, are just like finally thawing out. I hate this cold weather. And speaking of cold weather, our co-host Terry is enjoying himself in San Antonio, Texas. So he's not on air today, but I got the OG with me today. Drake, cheers to you, buddy.
Cheers to you.
Yeah, Drake's got his jingle. Yeah, looking forward to spring or what they call full spring. Is that the saying, Drake?
I don't even know. I just want it to be warmer. Like, I don't like feeling the cold in my bones when I walk outside.
I'm telling you, man.
And it's Oklahoma, so it's like it gets colder. And there's some places like you go to Colorado and it's cold and it's snowing, but the wind, here is
brutal.
just like it just whips it away from you. I remember when I had my ISP and I had to like go work outside. Ugh, it is nope.
Well, and not to mention, you used to be the type of guy that'd be climbing up on 200-foot tall towers and stuff, dealing with the wind cutting through you.
It's slightly colder up that high.
Yeah. Well, dude. Well, anyway, everybody listening to this on the day that it comes out, you should be experiencing some warmer weather. So go out and enjoy that. I know I will, and I won't be filming a podcast on that day, but, we got work to do here. So before we get started, of course, like, subscribe, hit that notification button so that way you get new content from us. We got a lot of cool stuff coming out. We've got some kick-ass guests coming on. Everybody from private equity capital. We got some new marketing and sales stuff coming online. We got EOS stuff coming online, and I am just excited about our roster. So be sure to like, subscribe so you get those episodes. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Appreciate you guys. And it's just kind of humbling to see this is a pet project that just kind of developed over the last few years. And now people, they want to sponsor our podcast. So I appreciate you guys. And that's more importantly because of you listeners. So speaking of which, a few new followers/subscribers, which I always try to rattle off a few, but man, we get a bunch every week. So thank you, Benjamin Hughes, John Sagmo, which I noticed. I know you, John. Your name was scrunched up, and I was like, Joanne Sagmo? But no, I know who you are. You're up in South Dakota. Parker, 519, Chef Boy, RD. I loved how they did that. Hey, when I was typing it, I felt like I'm Ron Burgundy. But Nick Slavic, OG Baby Sanchez, Mike Gord, and many, many more. We appreciate you guys. We love our community. It's awesome. And if you get a chance, get some Contractors kick-ass gear in our store. Just look in the show notes. Those go to Proceed, our construction camp for kids. Man, and I threw this wild idea out, and poor Terry didn't make it. But Drake, you have enlightened me on the world of this new website. So where the hell did you find perplexity.ai?
Dude, I just go down deep rabbit holes about learning about new AI stuff. And it's like, how can I use this to help me? How can I use this to help others? And when new stuff comes out, I just like go crazy on like trying to find stuff. Cause like when you're going down the rabbit hole, right? There's a whole bunch of rabbit holes you can go down. But it's nice if I could take that thing that I'm interested in and do some searching and find out all the different sources of all the information and then have AI compile it into this nice, fun, interesting narrative.
Yeah.
with sources.
Well, I went down rabbit holes, and that's what was the genesis of our episode today, which I love to nerd out on things. I love to learn on the why things are done the way they are, or who the hell said that's how things are supposed to be done, or how was that created? And it was like, cool, we should like go down this as a podcast. And I think any of those, and many of you I know personally and have gotten to know through our community, like you think the same thing we do. And I just love this. So we've got a list of weird just construction facts that we're going to dive into today. And we're going to use Perplexity off to the side here just to confirm it. But Drake, I know you looked through one of these. Is there anyone in particular that popped out at you that was like, ooh, I want to learn more about that?
I'll be honest, like I thought several of them were really cool, but even just going in order, right? So
Yeah.
number one that you have on here is the speed square. And I tell you
Yeah.
what, like some of the videos that I have watched on YouTube, the shorts of people like showing you how to do all this stuff with the speed square, like I am not gifted. I'm gifted on a keyboard. I'm not necessarily gifted with a speed square, but the stuff that so many of these guys can do just blows my mind.
Yeah, so that was one of the first things that led me down this rabbit hole. Was I was snowed in, and I watched a video on the speed square. And I've been using these for years. Hell, I've had a few thrown at me in the past. In particular, I was even coached on how to use the speed square by my dad when I was in high school working on job sites. And I look at this thing and I'm like, who the hell invented this awesome contraption that we all know as the speed square? And I love it because my youngest son was like, but it's not square. It's shaped like a triangle. And I'm like, well, let me educate you, my boy. And I showed him how it was. But I was like, who the hell invented this crazy device? And so the speed square, ironically, was invented in 1925 by Albert J. Swanson, which many in the trades know the Swanson name, and we assume they're just a tool manufacturer. But this guy created it in his machine shop for his essentially himself and then his fellow carpenters. And then what's cool about it is now they still to this day distribute tools all over the world for this concept of a speed square, which is basically a triangle that will not only help you draw a straight line, but help you find angles. And one of the interesting things, and I tell you what, I'm going to give you a head start, Drake. Most people don't know a lot of the notches, but there's a diamond on a speed square. And most people don't know what that is, but I'm going to get to that here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So on a speed square, not only do you have the angles that you use to cut lumber, but you also have hip and valley rafters cut angles. So people get a lot of confusion there, but it was intentionally in help with layout on framing. In this tool, we talk about all this software and technology and just all this crazy stuff in the world. And this tool has not changed, and nor does it need to change since, 1925. It was 1930 that it was eventually branded under his name, which is funny about this whole concept because it's like, and actually, let's search this real quick using your fancy little software, Drake. I'm going to type this in. What is the diamond shape on a Swanson speed square? And are you typing too? Don't cheat.
Okay, I won't cheat.
That's right. Okay, cool. I'm just testing the validity of your software.
Yeah.
Well, not your software, but what you found online. That we're going to have a lot of fun today. Yeah, so it was used for bird mouth joints on overhangs.
Okay.
Were you close? Sorry,
I was not close.
Answer.
I was not close.
But not only was the speed square used for all these cool things in carpentry and framing, it was also used as a throwing star by your angry field supervisor or father that would ping off your head, which will lead us to one of our other inventions of the hard hat. So, yeah. By the way, if you have used a speed square as a pry bar or a shimming tool, throw something in the comments because we know you're out there. I did the same damn thing growing up. But
Mm-hmm.
no, what a cool device that just kind of keeps on giving. Here, I'm going to share my screen real quick for all those people that don't know of the famous speed square / triangle.
Yep.
But yeah, man, this thing has not changed. It's such a cool tool. I mean, I love it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think they should use this in grade school. I think Speed Square could be used to teach angles in grade
Yeah,
school.
exactly. And you see that one that's on the small squares. The small squares, that the one below that, that's got a few extra things. The pivot point, like your pivot points and everything.
Yeah, I mean, just amazing, this tool and little device. It's kind of like how they're teaching kids all this new math. Boy, I'm showing my age here. It's like, oh, don't teach these kids the new math, but it's like, no, like this is like old school stuff that still works. It's like, if it ain't broke, don't break it. So,
Well, we just have to prepare the audience that the next episode is going to be us diving in deep into how they constructed the pyramids. We're going like ancient construction techniques.
oh yeah. Well, you know, we gotta have some content for the trolls out there. Is like, that's not real. But anyway, because obviously, be talking about it and pulling
In
off
the
of
future,
sources.
in the future, we can shoot on-site foundation repair in, was it Sicily?
Yeah. Actually, I think that's on my list here. We're going to talk about that. But before we get to Sicily, so the Phillips head screwdriver is something that I really didn't understand. So let's talk about the Phillips head screwdriver. So most people are probably thinking, yeah. And by the way, for any of you tradies out there that told your apprentice to go get the board stretcher or the sky hook or anything like that, like just bear with us here, because I mean, we're not trying to give you more like apprentice fuel, but seriously, this is, I always wondered this. So the Phillips head screwdriver was originally created by a guy named John P. Thompson in Portland, Oregon. You know, they got all them hipsters out there creating new things, but actually no, this was back in 1932, and it was called the crucifix screwdriver. And it's like, that's kind of weird, but this guy, Henry Phillips, a businessman, acquired the rights from Thomas's self-centered screw design because he had no success with it. So he essentially sold the rights to this now worldwide common phenomenon known as the Phillips head screwdriver or bit. And what he did was he changed the design and started mass producing in 1934. You want to guess what took this off? And I did not know this, Drake.
I'm very curious now.
World War II caused this product to skyrocket because of mass production, and they needed a type of drill bit set and screw that could maximize production efficiency.
Yeah, because you don't have to stab yourself when you have like a slotted. Whenever I use a slotted, I feel like the number of times I stab myself with one of those, I'm just shocked. Like, honestly, I'm shocked that it took until 1932 for us to redesign the screw away from the slotted design, because I hate the slotted design
Oh, dude.
or flathead, you know.
You know, it's funny because I still think in my brain, like, why the hell are we still using flathead screws on things in construction? It drives me crazy.
Yes,
And then
every outlet.
actually, using your new tool here, Drake, I'm going to dive in because Phillips head screwdrivers were great. Now I bitch about Phillips head screwdrivers as much
I
as
do
I
too.
bitch them out. So, all right. So,
I do too. I'm like, I even wrote it on the document. I was like, oh, yeah, the Phillips head screwdriver, better than slotted, but not as good as torque or square.
Yep.
Right? Like, I don't, it's not that hard.
Put this in here. So, tell me the history of the star screw or torque screw.
Yeah.
So, the star screw originally known as a torque or hexalobular in I'm Ron Burgundy. Internal screw was invented by Bernard Ryland in 1967. Where was Bernard all these years?
Yeah.
The torque screw has been awesome for
Yes.
construction.
It's so much like the number of Phillips and slotted screws that I have stripped out over the course of my life as somebody who is not in construction is too damn high.
So get this. The torque screw was patented in 1971. what the hell took so long for this thing to get to market?
Seriously. And why isn't it more mainstream?
So it was the key features and benefits of the torque screw include improved torque transfer. The star-shaped design allows for higher torque application. Reduced cam out, including, unlike the Phillips screws, back to our original context of conversation, torque screws were specifically designed to prevent slippage during high torque applications.
Yeah.
No shit.
And they're less likely to be used as a weapon.
Have you seen those memes where there's somebody like, yeah, crime's getting out of control. I found these bullet rounds out in this parking lot, and it's just a bunch of torque screw heads. It's so funny. No way. I see, like, well, you remember it because, I mean, you were in low voltage and networking. Man, everything was driven by the basic Klein set of tools in the electrical world. You got your flatheads, you got your Phillips, you got, your strippers and all that stuff. But then, man, when these torque screws came out, it's like, dude, everything I've got, hell, I think my entire house is held together by torque screws right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's crazy because, like, you buy wood screws, right? You buy the wood screws, and they come with a bit inside of them a lot of times because not everybody has the torque screw. I'm like, how have we not made this more common to where I can get it on something besides a wood screw?
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it's just crazy. I am dumbfounded. I'm finding out right now that was patented in 1971. Yeah. Poor Bernard. I hope you made some money off of it, buddy. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to jump to the next one, which actually I know quite a bit about this, but as contractors, we have this issue of having to have insurance. It just exists. We have to pay for general liability. We have to pay for property and casualty, typically your vehicles and everything, and your rent falls underneath that. But we have all these different classes of insurance. And there's a cheat code that not a lot of contractors know about. It does come with some caveats, and it's called captive insurance. So rather than going to an insurance company and buying insurance to protect you in the form of loss, you essentially create a group of other contractors and you self-insure. And I know that sounds crazy, but this has existed for, thousands of years. Not thousands. Let me look here.
Well, but think about it. It's literally like what insurance is. We all put money in, and it pays out when something bad happens. So it's just taking the insurance model, but doing it on a smaller level with people that all know each other a little bit more.
Yeah. So in the United States specifically, because this actually, it's funny how half of these things start in like merchants back in Europe, right? And I think that's going to come up with some of our other topics, but in the United States, it became very common in 1953 with a gentleman by the name of, Frederick M. Rice, who considered the father of captive insurance. And what captive insurance is essentially a group of individual of like-minded industries can pull their resources together and self-insure, which means that they adopt the losses as a group, but also more importantly, they adopt the gains as a group. So it's a private product that sets aside to where if there is payback, they can take those returns either as an individual owner or they can take them back as returns in the business in the form of discounts or deductions. The one key thing that is very important to understand about captive insurance as a contractor is, let's say you have $20,000 in general liability insurance that you pay each year. What happens is the first year in a captive, because you're unknown to that group, your costs may centuple in that, and you're paying well over that $20,000 in that first year, maybe even second, but then the third year, it goes down considerably. And then what's happening is that $20,000 may end up being $5,000, as long as you're safe and you're not creating a lot of risk or loss in that captive. If you're a contractor out there, you should really look into captive insurance, but just be aware that it's very expensive on the front end, but the reward is on the back end. And do not try to start your own captive as a contractor. It's best to join a group that is already insured under an umbrella policy, but also has some traction and runway around years of the other members. But man, I have been wanting for years to get into captive insurance, and it's just like finally gotten into it, and it's just a game changer for not only the owners but the business costs.
What and at what size, if you're thinking about like revenue or profit, like at what size does it make sense for someone to really start considering that, right? Because obviously we have to balance how much are my expenses versus how much money am I making, and at what level I can start to allocate funds towards that insurance on that upfront cost versus growing, right?
Yeah, so few things there. I would say as early as possible, but that's a double-edged sword. If I'm a company that's 1 year old, my ability to jump into a captive is there. It exists, but my risk to the captive or group of other insurers is higher. So my costs will increase in that. So you can start very early into a captive. However, more established companies are going to have a barrier of entry that's a lot less. However, the big issue is you will see increased costs. So cash on hand helps, but those are for the companies that are thinking long term, as well as the owners that are looking for multiple revenue streams of income outside of the business that they can take with certain tax benefits. So captives are kind of a neat little case study. Captive insurance originated in Europe when a bunch of ship merchants would collect together and pull their risk, and everybody would insure one another, because if 100 ships took off, 100 ships didn't come back, but that one ship was covered that may have fallen during a big storm or got caught in battle or something of that nature. And then what happened is they were covered, but it was absorbed by the other 99. And that's really important. That's where annuities actually came from as well. And we're not a financial podcast, so we won't get into that. But it's interesting how all this stuff came from like a bunch of ship merchants in Europe. But
Oh yeah. So what you're saying though is if I'm an owner, not only can I be insured with captive insurance, I can invest in captive insurance and reap a reward from it.
yes, you can. And I'm glad you brought that up, because a business I was a part of many years ago, I was not the owner. I was actually an operations person. They had captive insurance over the company. That company was sold, and that new buyer or owner transferred their ownership over to their insurance, and that original seller took and he retained his earnings in the captive insurance and now reaps the rewards off of that captive insurance group, which he's developed that relationship for years. And we're talking at a lower tax rate. It's just a crazy product that most people don't realize exists.
Well, I mean, that's literally where my mind went. I was like, I'm curious how many people like to just flip things into captive if they sell the business or if they're trying to retire.
Well, one thing I've learned about captive insurance is a lot of these accounts, and it gets a lot of crap from a lot of people, but completely legal, is everybody's pulling their insurance together, and there's obviously an insurance policy, an umbrella insurance policy over the main captive in the event that everybody goes belly up.
Yeah.
But most of these accounts, for legal infrastructure reason, are held in places like the Cayman Islands.
Oh, okay.
And they're meant to be tax shelters, but also to shield because of all the complexities of these different states that have different insurance laws and things like that. But they're also great beneficiaries, meaning the companies are, because in the event of a problem, they can pay those out because they have the cash on hand to do that. And what I've learned about captive insurance is everybody measures it on a 1 to 5 loss. Like you could have 5 years. 4 years are going to be great, but one of those years is going to be really rough. So they look at a 1 to 5 ratio on risk loss. And by the way, some of that pulled up on your fancy little Perplexity AI app. I feel like we're just promoting this webpage, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, Drake. So
Let's call it research on easy mode. Have you done anything with group purchasing organizations?
no, you want to talk on this?
Well, I can talk a little bit on it because I've wondered about it. I've seen it done in nonprofits. I haven't done it. I haven't taken advantage of it myself. But as soon as you mentioned the captive insurance, what
Hmm.
popped into my head was, okay, I wonder how many contractors are taking advantage of group purchasing, right?
Hmm.
And so when you get into things like, I think manufacturers may be a little bit, more used to dealing with large amounts of inventory. You may not understand all these concepts when you're smaller, but right. So usually, almost always, the more I buy, the cheaper it is per part, right? But as a contractor, I don't know what cash flow looks like. I may not want to spend 100 grand on my key inventory up front because I got to move that inventory through the queue and turn that into cash really fast. But something that certain companies will do is what's called group purchasing. And so in the same way that a bunch of companies get together in order to, pool together money to self-insure in order to meet certain minimums, right? Whether it be tools, inventory, materials. Some people will have these group purchasing units where they can go to the same distributor and now buy a whole lot more in a whole lot more bulk and get a much cheaper price on it. And then the cost per unit is much lower.
Yeah, well, I'm super pumped that you brought this up because this was not in our show notes today. But collective
Yeah.
bargaining or group purchasing, it's a secret sauce for the small contractors. If
Hmm.
you're a small contractor in a space that's dealing with these larger firms and private equity, like, these group purchasing and call it collective bargaining agreements can exist on a small scale. So, for example, I'm a small electrical contractor in a small town in Indiana. Well, I have a competitor across town, and we're good buddies. We've known each other. We went to high school together. Well, and then you got a cousin that's over, in another town, 2 hours away. Well, typically, what you can do is you can combine the collective bargaining purchasing power off those accounts, but I'll take it up a notch, Drake, because not only, and I got to give credit to Foundation Recovery Supply, that one of our sponsors, they're one of the few in our industry that does this. Not only will they give you a better price per unit, but they'll also consign the product to you, and that's massive. And
Hmm.
consignment on product, many of the electrical guys, HVAC guys, plumbing guys, they know what this is. But in my world, it hasn't been common. But you essentially have the product in your warehouse, but you don't own it until you expense it to a job. And you only get billed for what you have. And it cuts down on not only your inventory costs, but the back and forth to the building supply. Hell, I've seen lumber companies do consignment programs for companies that have their books straight. And then when you combine that with this collective bargaining group purchasing, dude, it is like a secret that not a lot, it's not a secret. It's there. Contractors, it exists. It's just a matter of putting down the ego and saying, hey, can you and I, Mr. Competitor, put our plan together and make it work?
So we'll clarify one thing. Did you say that if I'm the contractor, am I storing the inventory that we did as a group and for consignment? Am I storing that in my warehouse, or is the distributor storing that in their warehouse and just charging me as it happens?
Tradies, running your small business can be demanding. You got suppliers you got to work with. You're managing crews. Hell, you're chasing sales. It's a lot to take in. Listen, if you want to grow your business, you got to stop working in it and you got to start working on it. So that's where my friends at Foundation Rescue Supply come in. You're not just getting foundation repair products and waterproofing products and air quality control products. With their nationwide distribution, you're getting a partner who knows how to help you scale. And that's why I use them. The Foundation Rescue Supply team has industry knowledge that'll help make your life easier. You get the tools, the trainings, the systems that you need to move the needle. You want your sales team to close more leads? Done, because they have the proven process for that. You need your crews to work smarter, not harder? Done. Their installation training will get you out there and rocking and rolling in the field. With Foundation Rescue Supply, you're not just buying materials here, you're buying a better business system that they have helped create. And you sell more, you install more, and you grow your team. So the bottom line is this: you get best industry pricing, you get field productivity on track, and you get more revenue out of everybody on your team. So this is your chance to step up, scale up, and thrive. If you are ready to make that happen, head to foundationrescuesupply.com, check out their catalog, and speak to my friends, their team, how you can take beyond the products with your company with Foundation Rescue Supply. Good point. So no, consignment, and there's a lot of companies, large-scale companies that do this. If you're a landscaping contractor, Site One Landscaping Supply, and I'm not paid by them by any means, but I'm just a customer of theirs. They do it. Foundation Rescue Supply does it. A lot of electrical supplies, hell, Ferguson and companies like that do it to where their product is sitting in your warehouse and you don't own it. Now, the supplier gets the benefit of knowing that they have product that is essentially being dripped into the industry that can be converted into cash sales. So they see the value of that, but they're not having to spend more money in space. Meaning they're not having to buy a bigger warehouse and a big, massive Class A industrial warehouse in the downtown part of the city. Like they can have a smaller space with lower operating costs by consigning to customers that they know that they have their shit together from an accounting perspective, that they can track and make sure they bill appropriately. And it is a massive cheat code for contractors. Consignment and group purchasing plans are awesome. And I don't care if you're in windows, framing, roofing, they exist all over the country. They're awesome. And you should look into them.
Well, and just to double click on this further. So what does that look like, right? Let's pick a product that you know, right? So you can describe it that maybe in your warehouse doing consignment right now. How do I, as a contractor, what does that look like? Do I have that stuff sitting on pallets and the pallets are weighed so I know, it's done per pound and I know how much is being taken off the pallet? Am I sharing those bills? Am I just, CCing somebody when I bill something out? Or what does it look like?
Yeah, so most consignment programs, and we're talking about consignment programs in this context, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So most consignment programs typically are by the unit of measure that's dictated by the product that you have. And what I mean by that, not to get crazy with acronyms, is essentially we're going to park 90 plumbing fittings, 90-degree plumbing fittings in your warehouse on a pallet. 20 days into your billing cycle, we're going to come in, we're going to count that, and whatever you used out of what I brought you, so if it's 100 and you use 50, I am going to take and bill you for 50, and then I'm going to go back to my warehouse and bring you the difference. And then the cycle starts over, right? Okay. Because many of these distribution companies, and not all of them, but many of them, they have the ability to hold massive inventory of product when the small contractor can't hold $50,000 worth of product in their warehouse. And when I say warehouse, it could be a lot as long as it's under lock and key. It could be, hell, if you're pushing enough volume, it could be your box trucks, for crying out loud. So like this whole concept is a nice little cheat code for people that are out there doing enough volume and have a good enough relationship with their vendors where it's like, hey, I'm going to buy from you anyway. Can we just shorten the chain a little bit? And then if you hit certain thresholds, shit, you can get a discount on volume on top of not owning the inventory, which is sitting on your balance sheets. So exactly. I'm glad you brought that up. This is such a cool
it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. Like if you think about it, like I'm in this business. I know I will need more of these things. Can I just say that out loud and go, hey, I'm going to need more of these in the future. Can we just have a commitment where you know that I'm going to purchase these things in the future? How can we work something out to where we're just being flexible? Because I mean, these are the things that like, if you're in business, you learn about. But when we're used to coming into these things with the consumer mindset, right? Like I'm just used to going to Home Depot and buying it for every job. We don't get used to it because that's how we think everything in business runs. But in business, there are special advantages that you have. But if you haven't been exposed to them, you don't know.
Oh, no. And I think as contractors, we just get in this mindset of like, man, the business is going. We just, all right, go to the building supply, Jimmy, and go get that. And Steven, go grab that from that building supply. And it's like, no. Let the building supplies come to you. That's their job. They want to sell their product. And if you're not big enough, at least ask them like, well, what size do I need to be to make this worth our while? So,
well, and it goes back to something that you and Dylan had talked about before, throwing way back of like,
Oh man,
hey,
we're going back to like the OG episodes. We're going back
I
to like the 20s or
yeah.
episode 20s or 30s.
Well, but when it was like, hey, you don't have to be arch enemies with every competitor. Like
Ah,
it's okay to be frenemy. You can compete, but there is some benefit to not hating everybody.
yeah. I love how you say frenemies, by the way. That's so funny. Okay, so that's such a powerful topic. You should exercise it. Hell, if your company doesn't provide that, ask them if they can. And a lot of it, especially if you're ordering out of state, actually, great. This is not on our show notes here, Drake. If you are a contractor that orders things from out of state and you are not being charged sales tax, you need to call time out. And the reason being is that means that that distributor is putting the responsibility of sales tax on you, which is otherwise known as use tax, which means two things. You have to pay use tax to your state government through charges to your customer, or pay the same sales tax rate on your products through your state use tax rate. So if you're buying products from across state lines and thinking, oh man, I'm saving money, you are triggering the aspect of an audit, and it's going to be a big problem in the future. So use
Yeah.
tax, which a lot of people don't realize is a real thing, it files under the same sales tax law, but you're paying the tax on the material or the cost, not the retail value. So if you are ordering across state lines, double check that. Just please do it, because if you go years doing that, in the event of an audit, you could be triggered with a massive, massive windfall for back taxes on just sales tax. So super huge value add there. Ask me how I know. I didn't do it for years in the past. This is back in my 20s. And the state that I lived in at the time was like, hey, you haven't been doing use tax. And I'm like, what the hell is use tax? Well, I found out to the tune of $27,000, which I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I
You were
ended up
describing it.
I had to pay it out for 18 months. And dude, it was brutal. And I'm like, anyway. So that was a good tidbit on just hidden expenses that pop up.
Oh yeah, because
Yes.
as you were describing it, I was like, it sounds like if you know or if you don't know, it's kind of like sitting a knife upright in your chair and just hoping you don't sit on it. That's what you're asking yourself to do.
Yeah. So, by the way, this is interesting. Our next little line item here, and somebody brought this up to me. They said, was Labor Day created by the unions? Because I thought it was, and we're talking about the holiday real quick. So, was Labor Day created by the unions? And so I had to look this up. So, before it was a federal holiday, Labor Day was recognized by labor activists in individual states after municipal ordinances were passed in 1885 and 1886. So let's pause right there. There's literally like a civil war going on, and it's like, hey, can we just have a Labor Day?
Do not stand in front of people and their day off.
I know, that's crazy. And
I might die tomorrow, but I need a day off today.
yeah, it's like, hey, boss, I need a day off. It's like, dude, we're literally in battle right now. But anyway, sorry to make fun of all that. But a movement developed to secure state legislation. New York was the first state to introduce the bill, but Oregon was the first to pass a law recognizing Labor Day on February 21st.
Did you say Oregon?
Yeah, Oregon.
So that happened in Portland too?
Yeah, I know. Like, well, there's a pattern here. Like, are there certain things that just kind of evolve around Portland? I know we got some other things on our list here, but this is crazy. So, by the way, I'm learning this fresh. So, it says during 1887, four more states, Colorado, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York, passed laws creating a Labor Day holiday. By the end of the decade, Connecticut, Nebraska, Pennsylvania had followed suit. By 1894, 23 more states finally adopted, which is funny if you think about it, because I'm in Oklahoma. All of this was before Oklahoma was a state.
Yeah.
So we're all sitting. I guess people in Oklahoma were like, "Well, eventually it'll get here, but we're not a state, right?" But Congress passed an act making it the first Monday in September each year a legal holiday. That was in June 28th, 1894. Huh. That's interesting. So it wasn't by unions. It was by an activist movement that just were inspired by the idea, and off it went. So
An activist movement out of Oregon. Who would have thought?
I know. Interesting. Actually, it's probably by some disgruntled guys like probably 30. And by the way, contractors out there can recognize this. It's like, dude, I've been 37 days straight. I just need a frickin' day off. Like, you know what? I'm so passionate about getting a day off. I'm going to push something up legislation. We've all been there. We have all been there. That's crazy.
You buy enough senators a drink and he might get a day off.
I know, right? Hey, no, that's cool. Actually, so that was sight unseen on this. And by the way, I didn't get a chance to research this next one. I'm interested on this one. Did you already look it up, Drake?
So not only I looked it up, so obviously we're recording this, but I actually got the answer right before I looked it up.
Oh, in your brain? Are we talking about
my
the
brain.
nails?
Yeah.
So, okay, so I want to hear this one. So the question was, so by the way, I've always been curious on why nails are called like 16 penny nails, 8 penny nails, all that, but they've got like 16D on it. And I was genuinely curious. I didn't know. This was my snow day rabbit hole that I went down. So you already went down the rabbit hole and figured this out?
So, well, at least I was curious. So I was like, obviously Google is like, I said, and what you had on here was, why are nails called pennies? And in my head, it was just like, I think that's the price. It used to be the price per 100.
Oh,
and
you nailed it?
Yeah, no, that's literally in my head. Like, what I was like, I think that's the price per 100 that they used to be. And then I looked it up and I was like, I was right.
Nice. Ding, 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 ding.
So I looked it up and like, that is what this was. Originally, the nails, the price per 100 nails was a penny.
So what you're saying is if I have the origin of the nail called a 16 penny nail, which we use often in construction, was that nail originally was worth 16 pennies. One
per 100.
nail. Oh,
per
100.
Per 100. So like a 16 penny nail, in England would have cost 16 pennies for 100.
That's crazy.
And the D was represented the Roman coin of a denarius, which was the equivalent of a penny.
Okay, so you just like took it to a whole other level, because I didn't even know what the damn D meant. And when you look at the box and it says it's 16D. Well, I don't know what the D is. It's a 16 penny nail. But it refers to Roman times.
Well, and granted, this is Google, so Drake didn't. I guessed right on the pennies being for 100 nails, but I didn't know all of that. Yeah. But it was pretty interesting. I was like, man, inflation sucks.
Yeah, dude. Like, we need to stop calling them pennies and start calling them quarters.
Yeah,
like,
right.
This is
per
cool.
nail.
I know. Like, that's nuts.
It's like now they're gold plated.
I'm looking it up on your fancy little app here today. Yeah, so all that matches, but also the pricing system. That's crazy. I mean, this is like a total self-discovery of like even me. So I'm sure our listeners like, oh, I'm pretty news. But I'm like, literally.
Well, for those of you historians out there.
Actually, that's what we should title the episode. I was today's years old when I learned this. So, by the way, the next one, I got to talk about this because.
No, it's foundation.
Well, yes, but also I don't have to use a software for this.
Okay.
Because I was there. So people are constantly like, They, oh God, I know I looked that way. There, I was not in Rome when it was built, but so people are constantly like, they don't build things like they did when they used to. And it's like, well, things in Rome have been standing for thousands and thousands of years. So I just want to break this down real quick. So first off, Rome, Italy, it was surrounded by several volcanoes, and many of those volcanoes erupted, and that volcanic ash created a base. And then that base is essentially a compacted gravel base. So it does not shrink, swell like we see in a lot of agricultural areas or most of the United States. We have a lot of clay soils in the United States. So while I was touring the Coliseum, I asked several, not just one individual, about like, so hold on, how thick is the concrete under the Coliseum? Because this thing has not moved. And it's literally 30 meters thick of solid concrete on top of volcanic ash. This thing is not going anywhere.
No.
So when we're building a 36-inch footing in the middle of nowhere, call it Midwestern America, you cannot compare construction value to being like, well, there's these things in Europe that have been staying around for forever. So I was shocked. And one of the reasons they made it 30 meters thick is I didn't realize this, that they flooded the lower sections of the Coliseum to emulate like sea battles. And they needed to make sure that it could handle the weight of the water as they recreated sea battles in the Coliseum. By the way, beautiful place, so full of history, super cool to see it. And I was like, hold on, did you say 30 feet? The few football people I spoke to, they were like, silly American. They, no, 30 meters. 30 meters thick of nothing but concrete, all excavated by hand, all mixed by hand. Holy cow. Man, that's why shit doesn't move over there.
Many more feet were lost in the act of building the Coliseum.
Yeah, I didn't get to the death toll over there with like, what the hell? Like, how many people died? But anyway, we won't uncover that anytime soon. But anyways, so cool. So this is interesting. You pulled some pictures up, and we haven't pulled this up on Perplexity. But the first battery-powered drill, I was surprised by this. Did you pull up the same number as I did, Drake?
Yeah.
So I want everybody to think about it. When was the first battery-powered drill that came out?
A cordless drill.
Yeah, cordless drill, battery-powered. And I immediately thought, okay, 1982. 1961, Black & Decker was the first creator of the cordless drill. And it was largely marketed to industrial and commercial companies. However, there are those who say that it was Makita. So I guess there's like a rap battle going on between Black & Decker and Makita that was ultimately responsible for the first cordless drill design. But that was in 1978.
Which is crazy. Like, okay, so we're going to put these on the screen. Like, we're recording. You can't see them now. We can both see them. We're going to put these on the screen.
They are ugly.
Yeah.
It looks like you rip your arm off.
Yeah. I didn't make them. I don't make them like that anymore. Yeah, because you don't want to die.
But what's funny is they rip your arm off, but they'd last like 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. With a battery life of 7 minutes, our latest cordless drill will only electrocute you 4 times during the life of the battery, because it's like, thing is made of metal. Like first, so I pulled up when I was researching this, I pulled up Reddit, good old Reddit, and the first comment was, "Those metal body drills are so beautiful. It's almost worth getting electrocuted over."
Yeah, if you could pick the drill up, right?
Yeah. And the second comment was, "Look, if you rewire it with good grounding and have a GFCI breaker in it, there's really nothing to worry about.
Oh man, that's funny. They dude, these things were brutal though. And they also had the traditional chuck. Like they did, I mean, where you had to get the little tool out.
Oh yeah. And they were super lightweight. They only weighed 15 pounds.
Hey, easy, easy. I don't want to get into some like tool culture, but there's a bunch of Ryobi owners out there really upset right now. Like, well, my tool's only a pound and a half, but
Look, in the 60s, everyone was like, "Hey, why was everybody so much thinner back then?" It's because every tool was a weightlifting event.
I know, right? Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna bypass this real quick because when I grew up, dude, we had a ton of Black and Decker and Delta tools.
Oh yeah, I remember Delta.
I'm searching it right now. And obviously Delta has kind of got a bad rap. Black and Decker's got a bad rap for being like the cheap tool company. But I guess okay, so they were bought by Change Type Industrial Company, a Taiwan-based manufacturer of power tools, bought the Delta brand from Stanley Black and Decker. The company was named Delta Power Equipment Corporation and was to be based in Anderson, South Carolina.
So you're saying it was the finance guys that did it?
Yeah, but I was interested. Like, Delta made some cool, like, tools back in the day. Like, Delta made some cabinet saws that were like, I mean, pardon the language, they were the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started seeing a lot of cheesy products from Black and Decker and Delta. And then, I'm sure it's still out there, but hell, if you go on, like, I hate to say it, if Terry was here, this would be perfect. Because I'd be like, if you went on Facebook Marketplace and searched Delta table saw, you'd probably still find like a $2,500 Delta table saw that weighs like 700 pounds, still usable, but like you wouldn't find one from like 2000. So it's interesting. But anyway, that was a good segue. All right. So I think we got a few more here, Drake, that we got to go through. We had some good segues or little pivots. All right. So let's see here. What do we have on our fancy little software? Actually, let me create a new thread. What was the biggest screw up that Will Blake made? Obviously, I share a name with William Blake, the famous author, poet. Biggest mistake William Walker Blake ever made. Be a good end up for the episode. Oh yeah, so it's pulling from William Blake, the poet, which doesn't really fit our target demographic, but his unconventional religion and political views, which sometimes led to misunderstanding and accusation and madness. I don't relate to that at all.
Will, did we just prove reincarnation? No.
Yeah, I know, right? Actually, hold on. So his involvement in the Gordon riots in 1780. This dude was a riot thrasher, man. This was crazy. I never really identified with William Blake, the famous author, but now maybe I should. He was reported in the front rank of the mob that stormed Newgate Prison.
Wow.
Yeah,
Whoa,
however,
man.
the involvement is debated among biographers and has been made impulsive rather than a deliberate mistake. You get yours. Fight the power, William Blake. Anyway,
So what did William Walker Blake in the 1700s? What was his biggest mistake? We got it. We got it.
Tell you, man, I'm making my mistakes every day, but I never led a revolt, and I'm sitting here thinking maybe I should have jumped in on that bandwagon.
Got to up your game, man. You got to up your game. The Contractors kick-ass revolt. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, hell yeah. By the way, I will share this. A funny story is, we have a lot of foam contractors that we work with, and we have a lot of concrete lifting companies we work with, and most people don't realize that those foam products, they create a lot of heat. What happens is when you spray that foam and it's, say, 105 degrees outside in the middle of nowhere in a prairie, and there's wind, you can get these gas bubbles that form and poof, like a flame will pop out of it just because of the heat. What will happen is that can set like wildfires like that. And it's like, I don't want to be known as the guy that set half of a city on fire, so we don't do that particular type of work, but I'm sure some guys out there can relate to it. It's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd probably set a few pastures on fire. But anyway, Drake, this has been a blast. Even in Terry's absence, we have gotten to go down the internet rabbit hole, across some fun facts, and honestly, I love this stuff. It's like, my only regret is not having David Attenborough kind of narrate some of the history lessons we have. For any of you Gen Zs, which I'm sure we don't have any Gen Zs listening to us, are probably thinking, who the hell is David Attenborough? But otherwise, Drake, glad to have the OG with us today on the show. And listeners, glad to have you guys on the show. And I appreciate you guys every day. Keep listening to us. We'll see you next week on another episode of Beers with Contractors. We'll talk soon. See ya.
Cheers.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.